Hello and welcome to Soul Family Chat, where we envision new possibilities for a new earth. I'm Guy Harvey, your host, and if you'd like to be notified of future shows, please hit the subscribe button below. It's down there. And today, I'm delighted to welcome Virginia Warren. Virginia Warren is a lawyer and a conflict alchemist. She says our current legal system is based on fear and is therefore flawed and contradicts the law of oneness. She's known as the Zen Lawyer and is author of Let's Kiss All the Lawyers. And she's also founder of Lawyers for Love. And she's speaking to us today from Queensland, Australia. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you for having me on the program, Guy. It's such an honor to be here with you. I love your work. And I also love this idea of bringing in, everyone's perspective on what a new earth could look like.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, my first question for you is, you're known as the Zen Lawyer. So how did you go from regular, ordinary lawyer to becoming the Zen Lawyer? I don't know any other Zen lawyers. So how did that come about? What was the journey like?
Well, as we say in this life, there are no accidents except for one that I had. And so my journey into that, well, I'll actually take a step back, because being no accidents, I was working for law firms as a younger person, and then I had my son 20-something years ago, and I was sitting around, I think 4 months after he was born, and thinking, oh, my brain's going to turn to mush if I stay home any longer. And one of my friends who was working in a different law firm at the time phoned me up and said, oh, look, there's a reception job coming up. Would you like it? And I thought, oh yeah, that'll get me out of the house. And there was a childcare centre built next door, and it was perfect, even though people criticised me because I was a mother going back to work so early, but I had to do that. One thing and another, the ownership of that law firm changed, and the new owner could see my potential and said, oh, how about I train you to be a lawyer? And I thought, yeah, why not? I've got a toddler, a full-time job and a husband, not to talk about, in order of difficulty, what those things meant to me. Why not study law all at the same time? So I did. And then 7 years later, I'd qualified as a lawyer. And then later on again, that firm transitioned and I became a partner of that firm. So no accidents, things just happen to always fall into place. Well, then one day I'm walking down my main street when I'm going on my lunch break, and there I am dressed up in my suit, in a lawyer suit, looking all very lawyery, but I have to be different. So I wear leopard print heels, stilettos, and I'm walking down the main street, and I go to cross at the pedestrian crossing and I trip over. And well, you can imagine how, embarrassing that is for a woman, like dressed up. And there I am in the middle of the pedestrian crossing, on my hands and knees, and hoping the stripes on that crossing would open up and swallow me whole. In fact, I was just stunned. I thought, why is this happening? And a man had to get out of his car and get me off the street. I was just so embarrassed. Anyway, I went off to see my chiropractor, and I like to say he was giving me treatment for my bruised ego and knees, and he sent me off to a yoga class. And well, I thought, yoga for a lawyer, ooh, that'll be like watching paint dry. That's boring.
So did you have sort of judgment about that whole scene at that time?
Yeah, I did.
That wasn't
I
for
mean,
you?
No, because I thought that was boring. I don't know, just boring. Because I think whilst I had a knowing growing up that there was a different aspect to life, and I did approach my life with a knowing, my inner knowing, I'd been taken through many different religions as a child, and anything that felt like it had a ritualism or anything like that attached to it was like off my to-do list. And I felt that was aligning a little bit religious, which a lot of people think that about yoga, and which I know now. But because I was like into Zumba, I was into more action-packed, getting that body into shape, doing that sort of thing, which I felt was more of my fitness regime. but I couldn't be wronger if I tried. I went into that yoga class and I wondered why on earth some breathing and stretching is what I saw it to be. And you know, I'm listening to the philosophies of the teacher. It just really shifted something in me. And I thought, oh, what's this? And like any good lawyer would, I wanted some evidence as to why that felt so good for me. So off I went to do a diploma in yoga teaching. So 12 months. I just didn't do just a short course. I went and did a 12-month diploma so I could be properly qualified. And that is where I shifted completely. And I thought, wow, this is so opposite to my legal profession. So I thought I'd call myself the Zen Lawyer.
And what kind of changes did that create within you that then translated into the lens through which you observed the law that you were practicing?
Well, that was the funny thing. As soon as I'd completed the course, of course, you opened up to yogic philosophies and all sorts of things, which, you know, deal with, you know, the principle of we are all connected at a fundamental level. But the most difficult thing for me was to come back into legal practice and align with the notion of ahimsa. And for people that are non-yogic, that is meaning non-harm. And I thought law does all sorts of harm to people, but yoga says don't do any harm. How was I going to bring that into legal practice? Well, that began another journey. And that began a series of investigations. And I went down the rabbit hole like most seekers then on that point and looked for any philosophy that could make some sense out of why we are living our lives like this. Why does a legal system operate in this way? It just didn't make sense to me at all.
Did you start to feel uncomfortable with your work? I mean, and did that create like a crisis, sort of an internal crisis?
It did. Yeah, look, it really did because, and as I started to do research, you know, I looked at for wellness for lawyers, and because lawyers are typically depressive and suicidal. Now, most people, don't like the legal profession, but want to ask their children to be lawyers because they see, you know, prestige, money, status. But the truth of the matter is probably 1% of the legal profession actually reach that status because it's the hierarchy. It's only those at the top that actually get paid all that money and get that prestige, if you like. So it was very difficult to then, because I looked at that, thought, why are lawyers depressed and suicidal when we're supposedly this great profession? There wasn't a lot of information on wellness out there. I looked at all our local authorities, that people that govern the legal professions in our area, and they're saying things like, oh yeah, you know, speak to your supervisor, drink lots of water, eat well, get some exercise, and go and meditate. They said, go and meditate. And I thought, you're asking a lawyer to meditate? That I wouldn't have a clue what that's 6-minute increments. I don't have time to meditate. And so I thought there's got to be a better way of even approaching all this. And so as I was doing my searching, I came across some learnings which took me down the path of shamanism. And that made so much more sense to me about human nature. Because it's like, you know, I could find some references back to 25,000 years ago. And it's so, there's indigenous shamans on practically every continent. So I thought, this has legs, this has got longevity, whereas law has been around for a relatively shorter period of time. And I thought, what have they got? And essentially it was about the human shadow. I said, okay, so I'm now trying to relate these two things together. So as a lawyer, I'm seeing conflict come in and realize lawyers, the legal system's doing it all wrong. Completely wrong. We're looking at it from the perspective of, I'm going to help you perpetuate blame. I'm going to take your problem from you because that's what you want. You want a lawyer to take your problem away from you. What do you want? When you've got a problem, you want someone to solve it. Well, that's not the right way of going about it at all. You've got to sit with your problem, This has been the way it's been done for eons and worked effectively, and where communities have been able to work together. Instead, what we're doing is helping you keep separating from your own problem so that you never resolve it. You can't see your own subconscious patterns that you've created if you're handing them on and saying to a lawyer, say, you go win for me. So what a lawyer is doing is perpetuating your internal separation from your own solutions. So to reconcile that, yeah, look, this is a new idea. And really it's how I see the new earth, and how I think it's going to progress in future, because people are realizing when you go to a lawyer, you spend a lot of money. There's no problem with that, but you don't come away with anything. You might come away with half of your property, upset. You probably, your ex is not talking to you. Then some of your family won't be talking to you. You've lost a lot of friends, rather than seeing from a shamanic point of view, if you like, because I can speak like that on this show, is that everything is there for your highest good. What's the opportunity in this conflict for me? Why did my ex or the person I'm fighting with show up in my life in the first place? That person is my mirror. That person is showing me where my conflict is. Hooray, I can now see it, because of course, unconscious conflict, or your unconscious rules, is what we call them, unconscious little laws, are unconscious. You can't see them. So all the external conflict to you is your mirror. Everybody that's giving you a bad feeling, is there to help you find yourself. So we should be thanking them, not fighting with them. It has nothing to do with them whatsoever. The trouble with the legal system, it brings in the other party. It says, let's blame them, and then create some nastiness between the parties. I know myself, I've been through this personally, and I've seen it firsthand. So I can then come and tell people all about it.
Well, some cases, and people, for example, want vengeance, right? And they'll say, well, you'll hear this all the time, well, I'm going to sue his ass off. I mean, that's coming from a place of sort of retribution.
It is, but of course that person thinks they feel better doing that. So initially that's an ideal situation for a human, because humans are motivated to do things because they'll feel better in the doing of it. So yes, go to a lawyer, now I feel better. Oh, yes. But that feel better, like eating chocolate, is temporary.
Yeah. And I do believe in holding people accountable, and sometimes going through the legal system is a way for someone to hold another person accountable if they're not responding to being accountable through other ways. What do you think of that?
I see everything in life, and myself included, and I've been through a lot of this, is how I react to a situation. I see personally, it's nothing to do with anybody at all. If somebody has come into the room and tried to upset me or do something against me, and I react poorly to it, if I want to respond in a negative way, I have to question why I'm responding negatively. If I respond with a compassion, saying, oh, you're doing what you're doing because you feel better in the doing of that, then I have compassion for that human. And I have done this, so I know how this works. And I then get relief. It's like the forgiveness. It's like I get relief because I see you. I have compassion for you on your journey, but it has only my reaction has anything to do with this relationship, because you are my mirror. So personally, I don't hold people accountable for anything. It's how I respond, because ultimately, if I have a negative belief, a negative rule, I have to go in and find where I created that rule, because I'll never be at peace. And when we're asking someone to be accountable, it's like saying, please validate me. And that's what the legal system does. It says, you pay your lawyer a lot of money and they're going to validate you, say you are right. But guess what? From the other person's perspective, and I'll just go back a little step. If you go into a law firm and you have a problem with somebody, you want to have a litigation, the lawyer will take your information and say, oh, I see how you're right here. Now, the other party's lawyer will take all their information and see, oh, I see how you're right here. Because let me tell you, I've never had a client that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So from everyone's perspective, even from the person you want to hold accountable, their perspective is correct and true for them. So we have to, in some way, honor that, because that's the lens they're seeing their life through. I see I am right because this is, who knows what is right or true? Love is true. Love is the basis of truth. And every rule we've created or every limiting belief has stepped us a little bit away from that truth of love. So otherwise, we look at everything as perfect. I mean, if we want to be fundamentalists, we are love and everything is love. So no one gets held accountable for everything. But of course, our reactions are a beautiful, beautiful tool for our growth. When we can see how we're responding and like, wow, look at me, look at what I did there. How can I own this? Because effectively you have, I'll say it about my marriage, for example. I had a 30-year marriage and it was one of great anger from my ex-husband. Now, I would say I am not an angry person, but therein lied the problem. And I would say, you've got to be accountable for your anger. No, he was just a mirror for the anger I rejected. I rejected anger in me. And it's a typical thing for women, for young girls, and is don't be angry. Be a nice girl. Yeah, all these little rules we run because our parents taught us these things. So I was the nice girl, and I'd say there's not an angry bone in my body, but yeah, there is, because to be whole, a whole human, I have to be able to be angry. Mm-hmm. Now, not that I'm going to exercise that in a vile or violent way, but I have to own it. And so then to not see the anger or accept the anger in my ex was me rejecting a part of myself, because of course he's my other self. Mm-hmm. When you're holding someone accountable, you're rejecting a part of you.
Well, I think
we're all one.
Maybe I'll use another term, another word, and let me know what do you think about that. I mean, boundaries. And let's say in a relationship and the person's been abusive, you may need to go through a legal system to protect yourself. In other words, you've tried other avenues, but the person is not respecting your sovereignty, your personal sovereignty. And in this current environment, society, we don't have a tribal council where the person can be, brought in front of and dealt with that way. So you go to a lawyer and you get a restraining order. I mean, that's what I was thinking of.
Sure. And I love this because this is how I see the legal system shifting. And you are right. Right now, we don't have a tribal council. And I see ultimately there will be no legal system per se because it's based in fear. Mm-hmm. Now, let me explain what I see of a domestic violence situation and how we could handle it. And if we start thinking this way, this is how the system will shift. So, for example, as a person subject to domestic violence, I can say this categorically, that if you create a rule around somebody, you go to a lawyer and you say, oh, that person's abusing me, I want a restraining order against them. Guess what? Rule breakers break rules. So they're never going to follow those rules anyway. And the rule they're creating, they've got a whole different internal legal system running with them, that person has, which is more powerful than any legal system that's external to them. That's why we all break rules. We all, travel over the speeding limit, or we might cheat on our taxes or anything. We are all rule breakers. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever can say to me they've never broken any rules. So, that's why I say don't be righteous about it. You're all doing it. It's just a matter of degree. Now, from a domestic violence position, perhaps, how we can look at it is there are two parties to that arrangement. The enabler, me, and the perpetrator, the other person. Mm-hmm. Now, when I learn to have sovereignty is when I'll get it. because the difficulty for people is, of course, I was in a safe room in a family court system because my ex would lash out, and I sat in the safe room with all these women that were subject to domestic violence, and I said to them, guess what? We're all enablers. And of course, you could have heard a pin drop, because these women were a bit aghast at that comment. It's like, no, like I'm a victim. And I thought, if you keep playing the victim, you'll continue to be the victim of everything in your life, not just this scenario. You are carrying the energy of victim. So I said, in the beginning, when you met that person, like when I met my ex-husband, I could have made a choice. Do I stay with him, or do I move on to another person? But no, the energetic attraction was there, of course. He was fulfilling my need to find my anger. And this is at an energetic level. But you can still say it anyway, that I had a choice then, whether I would see snippets of that violence coming out, because everyone's on their best behavior at the beginning of a relationship. But then it gets a little bit more bonded. And you think, no, I'll fix it. The enabler here, I'll fix it. I'll fix him. No, I can't. It's not my job. My job is to sit, as you said, in my own sovereignty. But until I learn that, where that unconscious belief in me was lying down, saying, because anger is a boundary. Anger, if you learn anger in a most effective way, it is your boundary. It's just like, no, you're not going to do that to me. See you later. But most of us, particularly women and a lot of men, and we've all got combinations and permutations of these things at certain levels, will, unfortunately, allow people to step into their sovereignty. And we're doing it all the time. We're allowing people like, oh, I don't really want to do that, but I should. Like, that's the same thing. No shoulds, no obligations. What's the rule that says you should do anything? Yeah. These are all rules we've created. And when we're saying lawyers for love, for example, will say your internal legal systems, the rules you've created, have now been reflected into the collective. So that's why we've created all these rules, the parents on the outside of us, the law, which we think is going to help us. It doesn't. It doesn't help you, because you go in it for a domestic violence situation. Yeah, if someone's going to be a little bit good and follow that restraining order, good, fantastic. But guess what? You'll go on, me as the victim. I like to use the word experiencer, by the way, because I am not a victim. I'll go on and then I'll repeat that with somebody else. I'll keep playing victim role until I get it. Oh, hang on. Yeah, I've got to actually set a boundary. I've got to actually utilize my anger and my assertiveness to stop this energy pattern, because I'm just carrying a pattern with me. You take yourself with you wherever you go. So the legal system is just getting money from you. It's going to maybe put that person in jail. That person in jail is this society. This is the collective consciousness saying we reject this, rather than, oh, how did you become a perpetrator? Well, that's the other side of the fence. The perpetrator, generally speaking, I'm generalizing totally here, for examples, is a male. And why would a male generally get angry? He's covering another emotion. Boys are usually told, boys don't cry. There's a rule. So boys can't express their whole self, and they think it's not being a man to cry or show emotion. So they're going to bring it out in another way. And it's generally anger. This is what I've seen in my legal practice. So these are obvious things. When someone's coming to me with a conflict like that, I generally can say, oh, you've got to own sadness and you've got to own anger. Excellent. When you both do that, you'll start feeling better. And the tensions will drop within you and you become more peaceful. You've dissolved these rules that you've created, the internal legal system. And then once that happens, because as we're all individually moving toward inner peace, the same thing happens. That will reflect externally. We'll need less laws to govern people instead of more, because you can see it in society now. We keep creating rules upon rules upon rules upon rules upon rules because people keep breaking the rules. The rules aren't certain. ask any lawyer, as I said, you come into a lawyer and they'll say you're right. They will say the other person is right too, to a degree. Oh, she yelled at you, so you couldn't help it, you lashed out. You know, all sorts of things like this happen all the time. And so the only way to resolve this is for each individual to check in with their own responses to life, to their conflict. How am I responding to it? If I was responding saying, it's not fair, he's so angry, how about I say, oh, I've rejected anger. I reject anger, I can't accept it. How about I say, oh, I see how I haven't accepted anger. And when I accept anger, that energy of anger can flow through me freely now and be utilized to hold up my own boundaries. I also do something because we're so connected, that also will energetically shift in the other person, because they'll no longer be attracted to me in that space, because I'm not running the same negative energies that they are. And the more you do that, the more your own vibe raises, the closer you come to peace, and the less you attract those things into your life, the more peace you see externally. It's just the law of one.
Well, it's interesting, particularly in the 1980s, there were some very large projects where they taught transcendental meditation in prisons. And there was one project in Senegal in Africa. They actually closed the prisons. I mean, they taught everybody to meditate, and they were able just to release everybody because they were release the stress, and they was releasing the stress and the anger, and there was no point to keep them to keep them anymore.
Yeah. Why? And the reason why that hasn't changed, and this is what we're trying to change about the legal system, is because the prison systems are making too much money. People are invested in fear. The powers that be are invested in fear. And this is where the trouble is. So this is why I'm so happy to talk to you today, guys, because we need everybody that hears this to ask for the change. If you've got a lawyer, or if you've got a problem like this, yeah, come to a lawyer for sure, but come to a lawyer that treats the conflict like this. It's a different way of doing it. It brings love into it, not fear. It's just like, I love you and I love the other person. I see how everyone's got a part in this beautiful game that we're playing. If we play together, we can help each other grow through it. But if we're going to just start throwing rocks at each other the whole time, we'll stay apart. And that's, you know, that's the reflection of society. I think what we're going through now is seeing how separated we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So this led you to create Lawyers for Love. Can you tell me a little bit about Lawyers for Love and what kind of work you're doing, and how do you sort of implement this philosophy in a practical way?
Sure. Well, you see, what's happening is we came across this beautiful idea. You see, there's two sides to using a lawyer, generally speaking. You're either coming together in a relationship, so you want a contract, and that could look like anything. You know, you're buying a house, or you're buying a business, or you just want an agreement drawn up, or something like that, or a will. You know, how I'm going to divide up my property when I die, and all those sorts of things. So there's those sorts of agreements that lawyers deal with. And the other side of it is people splitting apart, people fighting. So there's a coming together and a separating of people.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So that's two ways. Now, when we look at the first way, we see that all the documents, when people are coming together to do something, your will and the contract are talking about things that can happen. If they don't happen, there's penalty in the laws and the legislation. And it's really a me versus you all the time. So what we thought we would do as lovers, as lawyers for love, is put a clause in documents saying love is of the essence, which means simply that every time you make a decision moving forward in a relationship together with somebody, that your decision is based in love. That then transmutes the fear in the documents and in the legislation. Because right now, firstly, lawyers cannot say the word love. It must affect them. I don't know. It's like the L word. Don't say it, because it's like there's no legal definition for it and it's ridiculous. Because, of course, many of us have been hurt by what we perceive to be as love, but not as what love is at a fundamental level. And Lawyers for Love are saying we've had to come up with a definition for it so that people will understand from a legal point of view that love has something for the ego to work with. So we say it's a state of being without fear that operates for the highest good of all in every moment. Because love is momentary. Love is momentary. It can only operate in the now, and it operates for the highest good of all. Now, you cannot have any fear present, and that means any negative emotion present when you're making a decision based in love. So it's not like you're taking my power and I'm taking your power when we're making a decision. That's simply when we put love in a document. That's one reason. The other reason is love has a vibration. If you put love, the word love, into documents, it's going to change the vibration of the document. So people are going to turn their mind to it anyway. And if we put love into legislation, all the laws that govern the planet, we're going to bring love in a sneaky little way that way. So that'd be really cool. And I'd love to see that. Love to see it. And I'm going to say love a lot of times, even near lawyers. So it's just a different way of seeing it. When one day I sort of woke up to myself, or got a download, and thought, oh my Lord, the whole planet is underpinned by fear, because every document that governs a relationship, which is most documents that we work with, have fear in them. Me versus you. And the punishment that's going to happen if you don't follow those rules. Like crazy. So that's one aspect of what Lawyers for Love are doing. So we're going with, not-for-profits, wills, everything that we can help people with. And we'll get a lawyer in your area to help you. To put, and the more we educate the public to want it, they're going to then ask for lawyers that are doing it. And it's a perpetual situation, so that we're bringing everyone together in this idea. And number two is, yes, when we're separating or when we're in conflict, it's instead of here, hand over the problem, it's like, oh, let's bring all the parties in together and say, okay, so you were all doing this thing to each other because you were feeling better in the doing of it. That's awesome. And I know that sounds trite when it comes to things like murder and what have you. But we are here to learn what we need to learn on this planet. If someone murders somebody else, they are doing it because they feel better in the doing of it. We have to ask the question why, not throw them in a cell and put them away. They are me. I'm pushing myself away. Why am I doing that? So bring them in. Why? What happened? And generally it's because of the rules we're carrying. The rules that were imposed upon us by our tribes, being our families, school teachers, whatever it is, even our peers, when we were much younger. And the cycle has to stop, because it's ancestral. And we keep saying, oh, but my parents did this to me. Bad luck. So what? Move on. Suck it up. Take responsibility. You're big enough now. Be our own parents. Because that's what we're looking now to, the rules outside of us, the laws, to be our parent for us. Why do we need that? Why do we need to be told what is right? We don't need to be told. What we need to do is look internally and say, what rules am I running that help me feel better when I do something that perhaps other people don't like so much? So those conflicts, when lawyers are looking at it like that, will bring people together instead and say, okay, you're all in this together. How do we release you from the energetic bond? Because, and the fact of the matter is, like with my ex-husband and I, is that some people choose not to grow through the process, and some people choose to grow through the process, and you'll move that way and I move that way, and we just, at least we acknowledge each other's part in the play, and there can be more semblance of unity even in that idea at the very worst, which brings just a love-based decision making to our planet, because we've been living from a place of fear for eternity. Well, a long time. Yeah, I actually like to, from a Christian point of view, someone told me like, yeah, it's like the Ten Commandments, you know, like thou shalt not do this and that and the other thing. I think, yeah, that was just a set of rules that thou shalt not. And it didn't say what's going to happen to you if you didn't. Maybe God wasn't going to love you. Well, of course God's going to love you because like that's God is love. So there's a bizarre situation, and the church took it, and then they gave it to lawyers because there's too many more rules. So we'll just make some more rules and more rules and more rules. It's like all this based in fear nonsense, and I think it's hilarious. But yeah, I'm making serious light because some people don't see the fun in it like I do. But I've lived a lot of life and I've been through a lot of experiences. So if I can forgive people for the things they've done to me, for me, I think very certain. Yes. That then we are at a beautiful place in time if everybody can see that, at least see life from a different perspective. Because right now we're seeing it from, I don't know what's going to happen next. Always you're stepping into the unknown. You want a lawyer to fix it for you, so you know. You still don't know. Lawyers aren't going to give you a certain answer. You go and ask any one of them. Take your case to them, and something at the beginning, but you ask them absolutely categorically, can you guarantee me this outcome? No, they can't. Because there is no certainty at all in life. My crystal ball doesn't work. This is teaching us to step into each now moment. Love-based decision making is loving everything now for what it is, because it could all change, as we know, in the next moment.
That's fascinating. I mean, how do you see law playing out in the next few years? How do you see it changing? And a lot of the structures are transitioning now, governmental structures, institutions, and obviously it's all based around law. What kind of changes
Everything is based around law. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. And this is what people don't realize. And I think this is what Lawyers for Love are doing as well, as bringing this to the public's attention. That everyone, particularly in spiritual communities, we're all looking at, the beautiful work we can do in ourselves and everything, and that type of thing. But often what happens is, and hopefully I'm going to answer your question in a minute, but we get off our yoga mat or leave our church, and if someone cuts us off in traffic, we'll flip them the bird. You have that peace for a moment, but how do you carry that peace through your life? Well, Lawyers for Love are saying your internal legal systems need to be dissolved, so we can dissolve all the rules. We have guidelines in life, not punitive rules. Guidelines are perfect, they're fluid. The legal system, as you said, is a structure. Structures have no ability to allow energy to flow. They're closed systems. And at present, the legal system, we have hierarchy. So we have the people at the top and the people down the bottom, all the young lawyers particularly. And I was just interviewing one the other day, and she was explaining to me 18 hours a day, nearly 7 days a week work, not allowed to express her own opinion. It was like I don't know what it was like. I just thought, this is beyond my belief that humans, especially the lawyers that are a respected profession, can treat others this way. So they're sucking all the power up to the one at the top. But that's imploding, you see. As you say, the structures are coming down because it's no longer sustainable. The young people coming through are thinking, nah, I don't want to live an inauthentic life. People are more authentic now. They're not listening to the older people saying, you have to be a doctor or a lawyer to be successful in life. They're seeing many choices, many more options. How am I living my authentic life? And I think having been closed in, we've all seen a little bit more of that. Do you know what I've seen? I love this, is that many people that were quite very business oriented, very money driven during this time that we've all been closed in, have become artists. Mm-hmm. And they hadn't known that they had an artistic bone in their body. And this is what's happening. It's like we're meeting ourselves in our creativity. And of course, creativity flows. You can't be creative in a hierarchy because someone else is always telling you what to do. But if we're creating together, we flow together. And then we're bringing our authentic perspective to this planet. And if you hold me into a contract, for example, if I'm talking law again, if you're holding me into a contract and saying, I'm stuck in here, you've got to stay with me in this contract, you promised. What's happening then is, even a marriage is just like, oh, hang on, but I want to grow, but you want me to stay. You want me to be the same as that you wanted me to be. Now, if I don't go off and be my authentic self, you miss out, because you're not going to benefit from my authenticity on this planet. The planet doesn't grow. The creativity doesn't grow. You've held me in to suck my power away, and I've just allowed it. That's not flow. That's structure. Like the idea of marriage till death do us part. Boy, that was a revelation to me. It's like, well, you get married at 24. How on earth are you going to know what you're going to be like at 54, like I am now? It just, what? That's just insane. And so I understood, yeah, even just civil contracts, the same thing. But give them guidelines. Check in with each other. How are you feeling? This is not about here anymore. It's about, how do I feel about everything? And that's how I see Lawyers for Love. Shifting, we have created an alternate platform, and actually we're setting up an experimental law firm that scientists are going to get data on. How do we shift people to love using this different system? Using the current legal problem that you have, yes, there'll be some interaction with the legal system, because that's the reality of our planet. You can't deny that. But you can transition. Like my favorite analogy is, when once upon a time we're all smokers. For you young people out there that don't know that, we all smoked. And then, some non-smokers popped up, and it was just like, oh, what are you doing? You're not smoking? That's so antisocial of you. Now it's the exact opposite way around. People get the idea, oh yeah, it's pretty cool not to smoke, and those sorts of things. So it's just a transitional period, I see, of time before the structures are coming down, but someone needs to be there to show an alternative, and that's what we're here to do.
I liked what you said about contracts. If you want to leave a contract, then it doesn't help the other person if you stay and don't grow. And Matt Kahn, who's a spiritual teacher, he said that if it's good for you to leave any kind of relationship, it's good for them.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, people haven't been educated.
Even if they don't agree with it.
That's right, exactly. But if they can see some benefit in it, and this will happen over time, it's not an instant thing, but it's shifting the perception in life to understand that. Just like, you made me a promise, you don't respect me. You know, all these rules that we created that, oh yeah, disrespect, you know, it's your fault, all these things. It's like, stop blaming the other person. They want to move on. And they could love you and have compassion for you just the same. And you could have compassion and love for them, even if you don't agree with them. That doesn't mean we're all la in agreement. It means I see where you're coming from. And that just puts a completely different energy into the planet. And we need this for Mother Earth now, as we're shifting through these new dimensions. Because it is about the collective consciousness shifting. And that's why I'm here talking about this. Because what people, getting back to that, is what people haven't been talking about is the legal system. And it governs all relationship. And that's what humans are. We're in relationship to something else at all times.
Other systems of justice that you've observed in other societies or traditional societies that you think that will come into play, that we may adopt?
Well, yes. From a shamanic perspective, I see that, particularly when some things are more difficult to resolve. I see wisdom councils being involved. I see that, and that is the politics more than a hierarchical politics. It's more of a spread across portfolios of areas of expertise, that those that are so aligned with love will be the ones to sit and help you transition to love. Because that's what it is. It's about transmuting your fears into love. And so when I'm seeing perhaps if we had, for an example, a wisdom counsellor and someone's like, they've become a drug addict in your society, that wisdom counsellor could say, well, obviously I have the energy of that in me to allow that to happen. Let's talk about that, because otherwise it wouldn't exist. It's physics. It wouldn't exist. So it must exist in society and within all humans in society for that to actually happen at all, is the way I see it. Now, we've gone to some measures by bringing I thought it was funny, you know, when people are working remotely now and we have remote courts, very funny when the barristers are saying, legal counsel are saying, oh, and the judge is just on the screen. It's brought the whole system down to a level, because of course the judges sit up high, you know, there's this high idea of you've got to look up to these people. Whereas it's all that iconoclasm, and we've got to shift it. Yes, we go to people that have more wisdom than us to help us grow too. Because even if I'm sharing something with you, I'm teach learning. I get something from it. We're just exchanging files. So I'm never arrogant to think I know too much, because it's here that counts, how I feel about everything. And so the other systems now, I know the Australian legal system has gone to some length to bring the judges down to the level of the litigants by sitting, say, with our Indigenous around a table and bringing in the tribal elders to help with solutions, because for some reason, they seem to think Indigenous are separate to the rest of us. But we're all human, in my humble opinion, and we all feel the same. We're all connected. And that's another story that Lawyers for Love are actually bringing in, because the Australian legal system recognises the connection within Indigenous people. But but for the common lawyer, there's one-way proprietary rights. It's separated. How does that work? Oh, and they say it's because of the Indigenous belief system. Okay. You know, so it's interesting, you know, and I believe in what the Indigenous belief system is 100%, because it's about the fundamental connection of all humans.
What do you think the role of forgiveness is in legal disputes?
It has great benefit, but I think it's forgiving yourself for thinking you are less than worthy. It is very difficult for people to forgive another person. I see that. But if we can say, this is what I like to do, but whatever works for you. But firstly, forgive yourself, because, it's because I didn't realize I was running this rule, you know, and now I realize it. Okay, so that's awesome. I've got this work to do for me. But forgiving somebody else is sometimes difficult for people. It's easy for me to forgive others. I don't really, no, it's just they're doing their thing. But to have compassion, I think, is a good thing, because they're just on their journey. If they knew to do something else, they would. Mm-hmm. They've got a rule there, a law in society that says don't do this, yet they did the opposite. Why did they do that? And that is even because we often think of all the bad people in life are doing bad things. Well, in our society, and recently we've had some judges are in position of sexual harassment. You know, these are people that should, the obligatory word should, know better. However, their internal legal system told them, no, I'm above that, or I'll do something different. So it's across the board. So forgiveness, I would say compassion. Have compassion for them and their journey, if you have difficulty with the word forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Because they're only doing something because they feel better in the doing of it, and they don't even know why. They have no idea. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. Because if you can sit in a place of contentment and peace, as I generally do, or are able to move back to that place very quickly, you wouldn't want to impose any negative behavior on anybody else intentionally. It's just not what you want to do when you're coming from this place. It's just like, oh, and I pretty much I say that about everybody. I think, oh, it's like, wow. And, there's a line of empathy and all those sorts of things. It's another big story, but it is a case of like, oh, gee, look at you and your journey. Okay. because you're the other me. You're my other self. That's how I see it.
Children get affected negatively a lot about the current legal system and divorces and what kind of suggestions you have for that to make the system more nurturing towards children.
Educating the parents, asking, not engaging in the conflict about saying he or she is bad, the other parent, but asking the child, how do they feel? Firstly, acknowledging emotion, because that is where we've become, this is why we have conflict in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The children, and I went through it myself, parents divorcing and all these things, the children are the ones that are coming through and becoming fragmented. The children are creating their own rules based on what the tribe is telling them. It's just an experience for them. If they're in the legal system, it is an experience for them. We are all here to experience something in life. However, if parents were more aligned, they could say, okay, you know, parents are separating. We are separating because of these reasons. And if those parents are coming from an aligned place, there's no issue for the child. The child can then say, wow, look at how these, you know, these are perfect role models. I see how the relationship flowed because that parent was better off over here. But if they're in the present legal system where there's a lot of arguing and putting the other parent down and saying they're bad and blaming the other, that confuses the child. The child feels they're responsible for their parents' happiness, which is the exact opposite that's true. The child can be educated through all that, but that's a big story.
Wonderful. Yeah, I like that. And what about so what are your plans now with Lawyers for Love in the next year or so?
Well, we're attracting in lawyers from around the world to show us how they're bringing love into their legal practice. That's step one. So I'm doing some broadcasts on that, which is starting up again in February. So there's a few of those coming along, which is fun. We're also collaborating with scientists to gather data on the methodologies we're using to bring more love into the world using conflict, or by entering into arrangements with each other or separating from in arrangements, just as an alternate platform. So we're gathering data, which will hopefully enlighten people. We're asking members of the public to say, oh, are you bringing love into your legal practice, lawyer? But it's also for the public to say, I've got to stop blaming the other person. But how can I do that? I see as a conflict in my life. How can I deal with it in a more loving way? How can I get the maximum out of it? What's the opportunity for me? Because right now the lawyer profits. You want to ask how you can profit as a person. How can you profit from your conflict? Not the lawyer just profiting from it. And it is the legal system. And we're not lawyer bashing. None of that. This is ridiculous. The system is what it is. We need an alternative playground. Let's go and build that. So we're building that right now. We're asking basically public to shift their mindset. How can we stop blaming our neighbor and go back to the old adage of love thy neighbor as thyself? But of course, it's about loving self first. And when we're doing that, it means we're taking responsibility for ourselves and dropping our rules that move us away from our authenticity. This is how you get back to self-love, is getting back to your authentic place. So Lawyers for Love are doing all those things at the moment. Yeah, we've got a website up. There is experiments, there's fun things to be done. Public involvement is most welcome because we will be wanting clients coming in to try these things out in the experiment. So, but we're still dealing in that space anyway without the experiments going on. I mean, that platform is just very new, but definitely we are connecting people with lawyers that are working from a more loving space because we have connected with them already. So.
Great. And you have an online platform where you're meeting people?
Yeah. At present, we have a website, but you just shoot us a note and we find out what it is that you're doing until we get a more of an automated system or some user-friendly system, because this is so new. It's beyond new. I mean, this is a whole new paradigm. So, yeah, be pioneers, jump on board. We're explorers. That's what we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, I love what you're doing. I mean, everything in the world needs transforming. I mean, every aspect of the world needs transforming with love.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And talking to you obviously just reminds me of how the law is always there, even though we don't see it all the time.
We see the politics, don't we? We see the politics, and we're always pointing the finger at the politics. But underlying all that is the law. It's all sort of self-governing. It's like we call it legal fetishism, because what you created as an external legal system is now controlling us. And so we've just created this closed system for ourselves, and we don't flow anymore. So it's going to shift. It will shift.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I really admire what you're doing, and anybody that's watching that's in the legal business, and I hope they'll reach out to you and connect and start to spread your message and what you're doing across the globe.
Yeah, it's fun times.
Great. Good. Well, thank you so much, Virginia. It was a real pleasure and a fascinating discussion.
Yes, thank you, Guy. Love to be on the leading edge. Bit of fun.
Good. Thank you.